everyone. We are excited to be here chatting with you guys today about dietary fats and cholesterol. But before we get started, we're just going to quickly introduce ourselves for those of you who are new to us. I'm Jessica Melnick. I'm a registered holistic nutritionist, the founder of the Anti-Arthritis Method, and the host of the Happy Joints Arthritis Solutions Group. And I help both women and men with various forms of arthritis get back to living life the way that they choose to, not the way that they have to. And Casey, I'll pass it over to you.
Yep. I am Casey Kephart. I'm a functional medicine nutritionist and the founder of the Feel Good Formula. I help women with all different types of autoimmune diseases get back to the activities you love to do, trash your symptoms, get your life back. And we do this all through diet and lifestyle. And I live in St. Petersburg, Florida, where the sun always shines.
Amazing. We just had a bit of a cloud burst here, so the sun's not shining, at least not now. But in Saskatchewan, it is very normal for us to have several different climate changes throughout the day.
Yes.
So the sun's probably going to come out at some point. It is July. So today we're excited to talk to you guys about dietary fats and cholesterol, heart disease, kind of those links or lack thereof. And the reason we're talking about this is because in the programs that we use, Casey and I use the same approach to help our clients. And we use animal products. So meats, poultry, fish. And I know that over the years, saturated fat from animal sources has gotten a really bad rap. I don't know if it goes back to the 80s and the 90s with the whole low-fat diet craze, where, we replaced butter with margarine because it has more unsaturated fats in it. And we were told that saturated fat is terrible and it gives you heart disease. And, eating high-fat meats was also really terrible for us, all those things. So we wanted to talk about that because using animal products and consuming animal products and animal proteins is really, really important for our health as well. And so we want to talk about some of the myths behind this and, just so that we can help you guys understand how important some of these animal products are in terms of our dietary approaches when it comes to arthritis and autoimmune conditions. So first off, though, let's talk a little bit about what actually is cholesterol. So cholesterol is a fat-like waxy substance that is in all of our cells in our body. Our liver actually produces it, and it's also in some of the foods that we eat. So cholesterol actually is an extremely important substance for us to consume and to produce. And I'm going to just go through some of the various reasons that what cholesterol does and what it's important for. So cholesterol actually helps us fight off cancer. It helps us reduce oxidation in our body, and it can slow down aging. It can fend off depression. It optimizes our sex hormones. So we need cholesterol to produce our sex hormones. So extremely important. It also is important for forming structures within our brain, supporting our mental health and our cognitive function. And it also is responsible for the absorption of many of our fat-soluble nutrients that our body needs. So it also ushers nutrients and triglycerides into our cells to be used for energy. And it is the precursor to creation of vitamin D, our hormones, and our bile salts that break down carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. So cholesterol has a lot of really, really important functions in the body. And like I said, our liver actually manufactures cholesterol as well. So of course, we want to maintain healthy levels of cholesterol in our body. So we also there's two different kinds of cholesterol. For those of you who aren't familiar, there's HDL, which is good cholesterol, and there's LDL, which is considered bad cholesterol. And so the LDL is what actually causes, hardening of the arteries. And so we want to reduce that as much as possible. We're going to talk about that shortly as well. So we want to make sure that we are increasing our levels of HDL cholesterol, reducing our LDL cholesterol, but we also have to have the combined HDL and LDL levels within acceptable limits. And we're going to talk about how we can do that. So cholesterol itself is only bad if it is oxidized. So the way that it becomes oxidized in our body is that it's by choosing the wrong diet and food choices and lifestyle choices. So, being mostly sedentary, not managing our stress, that kind of thing. So that's where oxidized cholesterol comes in, and that's where it causes damage to our arteries. So, but also keep in mind that recent studies show that cholesterol levels rise also as a protective mechanism, and it can act as antioxidants to fight free radicals. So that's where that HDL cholesterol comes in. So Casey, I'm going to pass it over to you to talk a little bit about cholesterol lowering drugs and how they affect the body, because I know they are super, super common. They are very much just subscribed. I can't talk today. Prescribed, not subscribed, prescribed by doctors. It's very, very common because we've been told that cholesterol is, it's dangerous. You have to keep your cholesterol low. So having prescriptions for cholesterol lowering drugs is very, very common.
Definitely. If you go into really any conventional medicine doctor and he sees that you have high cholesterol or even getting to that point of high cholesterol, she will probably prescribe a statin to you, any cholesterol lowering drug, without telling you about what that drug depletes of nutrients in your body, but also telling you what foods can help lower your cholesterol. And if they do mention foods, it's probably a low-fat diet because we're still on that train of fat equals high cholesterol, which is, again, not the point that we're talking about today. So if you are on a statin / cholesterol lowering drug, you can probably expect some nutrient deficiencies. And these would contain CoQ10, which isn't a common one that's talked about in the media, but CoQ10 is very important for our mitochondria, which is the energy for all the cells in our body. It's good for metabolism and heart health. So we need CoQ10 to be healthy, and the number one nutrient that statins deplete is CoQ10. And some other nutrients would be vitamin D, which is very important for our immune health, especially having an autoimmune disease. I think the statistic is 90% of people with an autoimmune disease are deficient in vitamin D and magnesium. But vitamin D is one of those things we can get from the sun, we can get from eggs, we can get from meat. And those are more bioavailable than vitamin D and, let's say, dark leafy greens. B12, which is another energy producing vitamin that does come from red meats usually, and some other products as well. Vitamin E, vitamin A, iron, and B9. So if you caught our talk last Tuesday about when we talked about fats, there's fat soluble vitamins, and they are A, D, E, and K. And if you notice here, we have a lot of fat soluble vitamins that will be depleted with a statin drug, which lowers your cholesterol. Never mind, I forgot my train of thought with that. But definitely, if you are on a statin, we're not telling you to get off. Definitely talk to your doctor about that. Search out a functional medicine practitioner. But you'll want to supplement with these other nutrients to help raise those levels a little bit higher, so we're not depleting all of these good nutrients inside of you.
Like you said, Casey, sorry to interrupt you, is I think I'm just finishing your train of thought, is that when we're taking cholesterol lowering drugs, we are also decreasing our body's ability to absorb these nutrients. So that's why we have these deficiencies, because we need cholesterol and fats in our diet in order to absorb those nutrients. I think that's what you're kind of meaning.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely. So some other things that can happen when you are taking a statin drug, cholesterol lowering drugs, would be, and these are not necessarily going to happen to everybody, so I do not want to scare anyone, but you know how there's always side effects to drugs. So some of these side effects equal liver damage, muscle aches, weaknesses, low steroid hormone production, gut disturbances, increased risk of cancer, stroke, and aggression, and immune resistance. And if you really think about those ailments that I just read off, I would say 9 out of 10 of them, or how many ever I wrote off, have to do with autoimmune disease, which is funny, right? So gut disturbances, i.e. leaky gut, that we talk about all of the time and in our courses, immune resistance. Hello, autoimmune disease. We don't need any immune lowering drugs. Muscle aches. You're probably already dealing with muscle aches. Weaknesses, might be dealing with that as well. And liver damage. I mean, all of these things go hand in hand with autoimmune disease. Why would we want to take another drug that is just going to enhance our autoimmune disease when it can fully be reprimanded with lifestyle and diet? And doing the protocol that we have in our courses, and again, we're happy to talk to you more about it, can help lower your cholesterol if that is something that you are concerned about, with the animal products and the plant products, and the combination of our protocol that we're doing. So I want to get more into, and I don't think we harped on this enough yet, Jessica, is what causes cholesterol to increase and what causes it to decrease. And I think you'll be very surprised at this because it's not necessarily what our doctors and the media are telling us. So we want to plant some seeds in your head. And if you're feeling defensive or triggered by it, please do some research on it. You will find what we're saying in the research as well. And we're happy to discuss more about it too. But so just blatantly putting it out there, what causes high cholesterol in human beings is refined and processed junk food, high carbohydrate diets. So this would be lower fat diets, higher carbohydrate, like you would find in a possible vegan vegetarian diet, a standard American diet, honestly. So you have your cereal in the morning, you have your Nutri-Grain bars for snacks, you have a sandwich with some chips for lunch, and you have your pasta and meatballs for dinner. And then maybe you have a dessert after, maybe not, maybe you have some popcorn, I don't know. But doing this day in and day out is going to cause, if you have genetic susceptibility to high cholesterol. So reversing that, kind of changing up the diet to a more high quality fat diet with protein, fiber, and lowering that large carbohydrate intake of low quality carbohydrate foods, which we can also talk about, will help change that cholesterol. So foods that are good for cholesterol, and it's funny that we're mentioning this because they are fatty foods, is avocados, a good fat, olive oils, another good fat, nuts and seeds, and veggies. Veggies contain that fiber. They contain those phytochemicals, nutrients that are very good for our heart health and our cells. Another one being omega-3 fatty acids. And we talked about this in our fats live as well, but these are fish oils. So we want to have a healthy balance of omega-3s and omega-6s. Omega-6s, if we have a higher amount of omega-6s to the omega-3s, that can also cause high cholesterol. And if you recall from last week, our omega-6s are more of the processed foods that will be like your chips and your French fries and your more processed, refined grains and carbohydrates. So, Jessica, do you want to go into what foods can cause high cholesterol?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just in continuation to what you're saying, is the refined and processed carbohydrates and just having a high carbohydrate diet in general is really damaging, and that actually increases cholesterol. So, um, refined grain products. So all the refined flours, like you said, the cereals, the breads, all the packaged things that you get at the grocery store, packaged chips, packaged baked goods, all
Mhm.
those things, packaged baking of any kind of sort, even from your favorite bakery, all that kind of stuff. You really want to minimize that in your diet. That's, very damaging in general. It's bad for your pancreas. Your pancreas has to work overtime, producing extra insulin. Having that insulin being raised in your body is really hard on the body as well. So not only is it that, but it also increases your cholesterol. Excess sugar, of course, that's another big one. So with refined carbohydrates, our body responds to refined carbohydrates in a very, very similar, if not the same manner as it does to sugar, because simple carbohydrates are broken down into sugar in our body. So, you might think, oh, well, I'm having, a sandwich with whole grain bread. That whole grain flour is still going to have similar effects on your body as does sugars. So
Just not as fast because you
yeah,
have that flavor.
yes. So, but if you're eating white bread, yikes, like watch out. That is essentially sugar to the body. So, keep that in mind. Also, having excess alcohol. We know that, excess alcohol isn't good for a multitude of reasons, but alcohol is also a form of
Yeah.
sugar. Having hydrogenated and trans fats. So that's another big one. Consuming things like margarine, and all sorts of vegetable oils, fried foods at restaurants, fried packaged foods. There's like we said last week, we talked about different qualities of fats and things that you want to use for cooking and what you don't want to use for cooking. Most of the stuff that we buy in the grocery store or in restaurants, especially fried foods, they are made with really inflammatory oils that are really unstable fats, and they go rancid and they oxidize and they're very damaging to the body. So staying away from hydrogenated and trans fats is really, really important. Also, smoking increases cholesterol levels. And of course, we all know if you're a smoker, you already know that it's not good for you, again, for a multitude of reasons, but cholesterol is another factor. Obesity and having a sedentary lifestyle are also two things that are going to increase cholesterol levels. So I know in the case of my clients and my community, sometimes when it comes to arthritis, it's really hard to get movement in, depending on if you're in the middle of a flare up. If you're having certain joints that are preventing you from, doing walking. I always say start where you're at, do whatever kind of movement you can do, as you're not hurting the joints that are already flared. But just getting some movement in, try to get your heart moving, low impact movement of whatever sort. If it's stretching, start there, whatever you can do, get moving.
Definitely.
Yeah.
One thing that we haven't really touched on is, well, you touched on the saturated fat in the beginning. I do want to talk just a little bit more about that because, yeah, saturated fat can be bad. Saturated fat can be good, though. And I wanted to just harp on that a little bit more because what you'll see in animal products or any good fats are saturated fats. And usually when we look at that on a nutrition label, well, we can't have too much of it. I need to stay under this number. Or you just say, I'm not getting this because it does have saturated fat and my cholesterol is already a little high, or you're worried about getting fat, which are very all understandable thoughts because we've been taught to think that way. But I want to discuss what's a good saturated fat and what's a bad saturated fat and where you can find that, and hopefully have you be just a little less scared of eating saturated fats. So, a bad saturated fat is anything that comes along with your processed and junk food. So, that would be on the nutrition label of a potato chip. Obviously, white potatoes do not have saturated fat in it. They might have like 1 or 2 grams of fat and it's not saturated. So it's coming from the oils. and the frying process in that way to make a chip. So it's not a naturally occurring saturated fat. You'll also find it in French fries. Again, not a naturally occurring saturated fat. You'll find it in baked goods. Literally everything that Jessica just stated in the processed food will have a non-naturally occurring saturated fat in there. When we talk about saturated fats in good foods, they are more naturally occurring, such as in meat or red meat. You'll find saturated fat on the nutrition label. There's nothing being done to that product to make it have saturated fat in there. It just comes from the animal. And that would be a good type of saturated fat. We need that for our cholesterol, for production of sex hormones and vitamin D and brain health. If you don't have cholesterol or the correct amount of cholesterol in you and you are going cholesterol free with everything, your brain is not going to function properly. We need fat for our brain. We need cholesterol to shove nutrients or usher nutrients into our brain and our bodies and our cells. So meat would be a good option. Not a good option. It would be a good source of saturated fats, as well as I know eggs are very, very controversial in the world of dairy, which egg is not a dairy, but also in the world of cholesterol, because it contains saturated fat and cholesterol in it. But it's a good source. It's a high quality source that we need, again, for our bodies and our brains. So don't be afraid of those foods that are naturally occurring and come from an animal, like eggs and meats, if they have saturated fat in them. And it's going to probably do more good for your cholesterol than it is bad for your cholesterol. So just to like break that down in simpler terms, high processed junk food carbohydrates, bad for cholesterol, it's going to increase it. Red meats, eggs, naturally occurring saturated fat, good for cholesterol and probably going to reduce your cholesterol. Does avocados have saturated fat in it, Jessica? I can't remember.
Good question. I can't think off the top of my head. I know coconut oil does. There's fatty acid, but I don't know about avocado.
It does. It says 3.1 grams in a 1 cup of sliced avocado. So again, another good source for your cholesterol, but it does have saturated fat in it. So I hope that helps ease your brain a little bit in that department.
Yeah. And so, the moral of the story, like we're saying, is don't be afraid of dietary fat if the fat is coming from good sources. Mm-hmm. So Casey and I always recommend the best quality of like meat, poultry, and fish that you can buy. So grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised, wild caught. That's the type of quality that we're recommending, especially if you are having like higher fat sources of animal products. But even within our programs, we're not saying you're going to eat, like a 12-ounce steak or anything for each meal. It's still very, very vegetable focused. It's super, super important to have the nutrients from vegetables and the fiber and all that in there. So we just want to dispel the myth that you have to eat a vegetarian or a vegan diet in order to be healthy and to manage an autoimmune condition or arthritis. So because we hear that so often, people are like, well, I'm supposed to avoid red meat, or I need to be mostly vegetarian and only eat fish. Not true. So we're hoping today that with this talk, we're helping, like you said, just calm your mind a little bit so that you're not so worried about good sources of fat and saturated fat. It's not going to increase your cholesterol. It's the refined carbohydrates, and it's also the unnatural trans fats and hydrogenated fats from processed vegetable oils and conventional frying processes that you need to worry about. So we hope this helps. If you have any questions or comments, definitely comment on this post or send us a message and we'll be happy to get back to you. So hope that made you feel a little bit better about dietary fat. Not all fats are equal.
There's a really good book, if anybody is interested more in this, called Deep Nutrition. It's all about fats and low quality fats and what it does to our bodies and our brains and even like our facial structures from our mothers eating a certain way. So super heavy, but also very, very interesting. And it's a read for non-nutrition people too. So give that a read if you're interested more in this topic and how you can have a healthier, low inflammatory diet.
And we are back tomorrow instead of Thursday this week. So we will see you then.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good day.